So in today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a recent lesson of mine and the changes that we made to stop this golfer rushing the downswing. Now with this golfer, I'm sure it's very similar to lots of you. It didn't matter what he did, how many lessons that this golfer had had. Every time that he went out to the golf course, he couldn't stop experiencing this sort of temptation to really pull the club down, lending itself to huge amounts of doubt and inconsistency on the course. And this is exactly what we did in a step-by-step manner. So the way that you're going to stop rushing the downswing is that you have to start moving your body much better. And you can kind of imagine if you sort of were throwing a ball or skimming a stone, you would kind of move towards your lead side, right? You would kind of produce a motion like this, or even imagine sort of bowling a ball. And this is sort of known as momentum. And moving in that sort of direction is going to help you gather momentum and also improve the sequencing. So I'm sure you can imagine if you're struggling with this sensation of rushing, then you really have a poor sequence in your golf swing. So the first thing you need to check, because this was the mistake the student was making, was actually in the posture. What was happening with this student is that, first of all, sticking the bum out a little bit too much, but actually in the setup position, there was just too much weight on the toes. Now, not only was there a problem in this setup position on the too much weight on the toes, but as he swung up, he didn't necessarily rectify this. It wasn't like he produced a better rotation. It was almost like possibly because of the poor posture position, the weight ended up staying on the toes and again, attributing to not using the ground, not able to shift weight, which means again, that loss of momentum. So the first thing we did is we worked on the posture. For you guys that you want to check, stand up nice and straight. Try and imagine that it's more your upper body reaching down. So try and get your hands to reach down towards your knees without sticking your bum out too much, like so. Then introduce a softening of the knees and just allow yourself to rock a little bit back and forth until you feel quite balanced, but balanced, not squashing into the ground. It's not some sort of squat or deadlift position that we're trying to adopt here. You want to feel quite light on your feet. So as you're rocking, maybe tiptoe. And this is something, again, with a lot of my students, I get them to do as a little exercise and a drill around the house. Improving your posture, as it did with this student, will give you the capability to improve your rotation. But to clarify, what you're looking for is when you achieve a backswing where you turn enough, your weight should be distributed either on the outside part of your trail foot or potentially in towards that trail heel. Either of those would be acceptable. Trying to keep the weight on the instep of the heel in the backswing position is not going to lend itself, in my opinion, to a very good rotation. So those two changes made a massive difference already to the student in mind, and I'm sure it's worth checking those two things as well. But then you've kind of got this question and uncertainty of how should you start the downswing? And I think to best explain this, there's two drills which I'd strongly suggest that you work on. Okay, so the first one is a simple step exercise. I say simple in idea rather than necessarily maybe in application. But if I got set up here and I took my normal width of stance, and I'm just going to practice here with a 7-iron, what you're going to do is you're going to put your lead foot by your trail foot and the club opposite your feet. So effectively you're starting about, I don't know, say about 8 inches to a foot to the right of the golf ball. Now I'm going to move my ball out of the way. What we're now looking to achieve is simultaneously, as you swing up towards the top of the backswing position, you're going to simultaneously re-establish the position of your lead foot. Now, when you're doing this exercise, you see what I'm doing here, you're still trying to keep predominantly the weight feeling like it's on that lead side as you're re-establishing the step, sort of like so. What we don't want to do is like massively move the weight on the lead side. The reason for that is if I move all my weight on the lead side, if you have too much weight on that lead leg, you're not going to be able to rotate. So you want to feel as though, yep, I'm moving to the left for a right-handed golfer, but I'm still keeping the predominant amount of the weight, or at least 50-50, distributed between my feet, because that makes life easier to rotate when you move. But you'll find if you did do this drill, and you did enough repetition of this drill, you'll naturally move much better, and you'll naturally kind of move with an element of momentum. So that's how you'd practice it. You would just practice swing up to the top as you re-establish the position of your lead leg, like so. Okay, that's what you're looking to achieve. Really big movement like that. And then what you'll find, you see, is that as you're starting that downswing, you'll then naturally start to find a way to trigger rotation as you move to the lead side. And that's going to help massively with the sequence. But let's just talk about that in a little bit more detail, and I've got one other drill to show you. Okay, so a bit of rope. just make sure if you were to practice this, you don't get anything that's too long. I'd say maximum 2.5 feet in terms of the length. If you go any longer than this, when you do actually swing it and you swing through, you might get a bit of a recoil in the face, which isn't going to be very pleasant. Now, with this exercise, you can do exactly the same thing. With the stepping exercise, you can do this just lead hand only. But the point is once you've done the step, the question is what you're doing from here is, as I said, you're going to be rotating to the lead side. So you're pressure back on towards that lead foot. But you see, as I'm rotating, can you see what happens? Rotate my pelvis, rotate my chest, it moves my shoulder. And as I move my shoulder, it moves my hands, like so. And then from there, I can propel it off. So if you're somebody who feels like you're rushing the downswing, the reason why you want to do these drills is, one, it will give you better momentum, which will give you better sequence. But also what you probably need to do is you probably need to train yourself to not immediately pull on the club at the start of the downswing. What you probably want to get a feeling for is that you're rotating. And it's the rotation of the chest that, shall we say, moves the shoulder. And as it moves the shoulder, it's almost like the feeling is that your lead arm is going closer into your chest. And that's what's sort of starting the initiation towards the downswing. So as you sort of do this, you can then whip that club through and you can start to practice getting used to the weight. So as I'm doing this drill now, you can see the way that as I'm rotating back, I'm still getting that full rotation in as I'm moving progressively to the lead side. And then I can kind of trigger, once I'm here, I can trigger that rotational feeling. And you'll be surprised how natural, with an element of practice, these sort of drills and exercises can be. I would say, and this is one thing that I'll talk about more this year, because this is something that I'm working with really hard and with a lot of my online students, is about repetition. I think if you could do an exercise like this 3 times a week, accumulating anything between 100 to 200 repetitions, what you'll start to notice is around about 3 weeks, you'll get these movements coming naturally into your swing. I think the problem that happens for a lot of golfers is that you'll do this drill once, kind of try and find a feeling for it. It'll either work for you or it won't. It's the thing that you're going to have to keep working on. But if you're rushing that downswing, those are your sort of checkpoints to make sure it doesn't keep happening for you. So similar for you guys, and the same for the student in mind. It was a case of changing the posture, understanding the rotation in the backswing and where the weight would be, and then getting a feeling of how to start the downswing with an element of linear and more rotational motion instead of sort of hanging back and pulling down on the club with the hands and the arms. And it made a difference. But I'm not going to pretend that it made some sort of instantaneous, the golfer is now a scratch golfer sort of change, because it doesn't work that way. It requires repetition. The thing that I'm always trying to do in the lessons, whether it be online or face-to-face, is I'm always trying to make sure that I'm giving the golfer the experience of the correct sort of movements, and then giving them drills and guidelines to follow so they can continue to practice well. So this video should really help you out, especially if you're somebody who is struggling with the start of the downswing. But I'd also suggest is this video here. This video could be a real game changer and take your game to another level.